welcome to Opera Lovers. I'm Sabina Push, and this time I have an interview with one of the hottest young stars to appear on the opera scene in recent years. When she took over from Angela Georgiou as Tosca at the Royal Opera House in July 2009, she had reviews that even Georgiou would have been thrilled with. Dubbed the heir apparent of Maria Callas in the role, Amanda Echalaz is a star on the rise. But before I bring you that interview, I want to talk about Echalaz's current role at English National Opera, that of the slave girl Liu in Puccini's opera Turandot. Liu is a slave girl who is in love with Prince Calaf. He, however, has his sights set on the cruel Ice Queen herself, Princess Turandot, who has a bloodthirsty predilection for killing her suitors. At the end, rather than reveal her beloved's secret to the princess, Liu commits the ultimate sacrifice and stabs herself. Amanda Echalaz stars in a new production of Turandot at English National Opera, produced by the renowned theatre director Rupert Gould. We began our chat talking about the role of Liu.
Well, this was been tricky for me in the beginning because the problem with Liu, I feel, is that people always see her as a weak character, and I really don't see that. For me, she's the one character that has such strong morals, and she just is completely unwavering and unblinking, and she really knows what she believes in and is prepared to die for that. And it may seem a little extreme, but to me she actually has a huge amount of strength. Even the suicide, she does that in order to protect Calaf, so even that is to me a very strong act. But often, Liu is perceived as being very weak and, the humble slave girl. And so I think it's sometimes fighting what's become the traditional way of portraying a character. And I think working with Rupert was very interesting because he was quite keen to find a way that worked for me, I suppose. Yeah.
When you take on a character like Liu, how do you approach the part?
Well, it's very personal and individual for everybody, but for me, I tend to start by getting hold of CDs and DVDs and piecing together the sort of history of the role. And then from that point, it's sort of finding a way that you can believe in the role for yourself. And I think that's always the interesting bit, is trying to find relevance in the role. And I'm quite open to starting with quite a blank canvas. If you arrive to work with somebody like Rupert, it's going to be a different experience, a different journey. So with this, I was quite open to starting with a clean slate and see where it developed.
And what about the language? Did you have to learn it all over again in English, or was that not such a big transition?
I didn't have to, because this is the first time I've sung Liu. So in a way, I didn't have that problem to deal with, which is quite nice. Yeah, singing in English to an English audience also has its challenges. But that's what we have to work on, our diction. So hopefully you get most of it.
Production is also quite English in its approach, isn't it? Yes. Being a kind of Chinese takeaway.
Oh, yeah. And a lot of the characters, we've got Chelsea pensioners in there and Margaret Thatcher look-alike. So definitely reads to a British audience.
Are you at all interested in playing Turandot? It's such a different role, isn't it?
I honestly believe that most sopranos, if they could, would want to sing Turandot. I just think it's an incredible role. It's, the intensity of the role. It's short and concentrated, but what there is just monumental. And I think, if I was, who knows, 20 years older and the voice happened to be in the right place for it, I would love to do it. But it's a killer, and you need to know what you're doing, and your voice really has to be in the right place for it. But what a gem. If you can do it and do it well, then wow.
So you fancy yourself as an ice queen, do you?
Well, my partner wouldn't agree, but yes. I could practice.
And what about Puccini? I mean, he's obviously a favourite of yours, isn't he?
Yes. Oh, very much so. I think I'm a sucker for the great melodies and the heightened emotion. And he knows how to write a melody that just grabs your heart and squeezes it. And I think you can't help but be drawn into it. It's, every night on stage when I'm in Turandot, I'll be standing there and you just get this wave of sound over you. And it's thrilling. And I think for audiences, there's an immediacy about Puccini, that whether you've been to the opera for the last 10 years or whether it's your first opera, it's going to move you in some way. And, he writes so well for women, so it's always a joy to sing Puccini which is a good thing, seeing as I do a lot of it.
You really kind of made your name this year with Tosca, haven't you? Can you tell me about what happened at the Royal Opera House? It must have been extraordinary.
Well, it's funny because Tosca's one of those roles. It was actually the first role I ever sang. And which is, looking back, you think, how insane. Should have started on Mozart or Handel. But it's kind of a role that I've lived with now for a few years, and keeps popping up and popping up. And the great thing about going on at the Royal Opera House was that it was Tosca, so I knew the role backwards. I think it would have been far more nerve-wracking to go in last minute if it's a role you haven't lived with for a while, because you don't half your mind thinking, oh, what's the next line? What? And it was just an amazing experience. It's one of those things you think, okay, this is a little risky, and I hope it pays off. And it was, a huge highlight of my career so far. And the Opera House looked after me, from the minute I arrived to when I left. So it was just thrilling. And of course, singing with Birtwistle made Act 2 very exciting.
I bet
it's a
it did.
wonderful opportunity.
Do you model your Tosca on anyone in particular? I mean, Maria Callas is so famous for it. Do you have a particular person you kind of look up to in that role?
I think Callas is just, she's wonderful for her interpretation and for the amount of emotional commitment she gives to it. And that's what I think makes her so special and what makes her Tosca stand out. It's all those layers of, emotion there. And that's something I'm always keen to explore with the role. But equally, you still have to protect your voice. So it's always finding the balance. With Tosca, she flares up so much and she's so passionate. But you have to watch that you don't also go crazy with it and give too much. It's sort of finding the balance of the singer and the actress.
Can you tell me, the role of Scarpia, do you treat him as a bully, or are you in a way in awe of him when playing the role?
It's a difficult question to answer because these days a lot of your direction comes from the director. So I've done a Tosca before where they didn't want her to be in any way tempted by Scarpia. But I quite enjoy it in a production where the director allows you to feel a slight tension between you and him, so that she's got much more of a fight within herself. And I just think it's stronger when there's also a sort of sexual tension between them. If you've seen the Act 2 of Tosca with Gobbi and Callas, it's just electric. And I like that. I think you do lose an intensity, I think, if you play that she's completely repulsed by him and nothing in her would go there. I think it's much stronger if she's got a huge inner battle going on.
You're going to be doing Tosca here as well, aren't you, at
Yes.
The ENO? And you've got a very interesting female director who's herself a singer, haven't you?
Catherine Malfitano was a fantastic Tosca. And it's interesting because when I was younger, there was a live relay came out, and I was a teenager at the time. My parents said, oh, I think you should watch this, And it was her first Tosca that she'd ever done, which is incredibly brave because it was broadcast live in real time all over the world. I mean, it was really quite something. And then since then, she really made a name with Tosca and with Butterfly as well. She's a fantastic singer. So it's going to be really a wonderful opportunity to work with someone who is now a director, but also has the understanding of the demands of the role. So I'm really looking forward to that.
I've got a final Tosca question. Oh. There is that ending to Tosca which can be slightly problematic for singers. Have you ever had any unfortunate moments?
I had a slight surprise actually at Covent Garden because my partner was actually in the production and he was an armed guard, and I said to him, oh, what's the drop like at the end? I said, oh, it's fine, it's just a few feet onto the mattress of this battlement. So I think, oh, great. And then during the interval went on, and they announced there was a technical problem with the set. So it didn't occur to me that would change the ending of the opera. And I ran and hurled myself off the battlement, and it was really a long way down. And I said after to my partner, you told me it was just a few feet. But because of the hydraulics on the stage, they hadn't managed to get it to the right level. So I had quite a long, but at least I didn't bounce back up. So yeah, it wasn't nothing like that.
That's the classic.
That's the classic, yeah.
I remain
dead on the mattress.